Thanks so much. And I'm glad to be here. And I'm really glad to see my colleagues from NIH, and also online are a few of my staff colleagues, Ishwar and Emir. There may be others. I just saw them briefly when I was looking up here. I hope you can hear me okay. It's really great to be here. I really wanted to come last year to the PI FaceBase meeting, but I'm sorry that I didn't get travel approval, so I'm glad to be here today. So I'm going to talk, and this is a little bit of a refresh from our DRKBPI meeting that was held, I think, in February in New York City, but I'll add a few additional items so that it's interesting. The next slide is just a brief sort of advert for my office. I sit in DPKIPC, and you know DPKIPC, we are the common fund, but there are more than 16 offices in DPKIPC, and each of us have a general mission to catalyze and coordinate science across our 27 institute centers and offices. My focus is on data science, computing, AI, all the things that really make science happen from an infrastructure in a programmatic and computational way. I am joined by almost 30 people in my office. We each work in different areas of the strategic plan to support data sharing. And this is our big support for data sharing right here. This meeting is part of our community of data resources. But we also work more and more on human-derived data for research. That's real-world data. If you look at the HHS FY27 proposed budget priorities, you're going to see a lot of call-outs to chronic disease, make America healthy again, and real-world data. So it's worth looking at that. I know that FaceBase has these components within it, and I'd love to see you join our network of opportunities. We also, that's okay. We also work on how much, I have like 45 minutes, right?
Oh.
No, how much time do I have? Oh, faster now. Okay, all these other things too. Okay, but most importantly, supporting our data infrastructure, of which FaceBase is a part. Good thing I asked you, because I would just. Okay, the next slide is this. I don't have to really convince you that we as biomedical researchers are generating tons of data, everything from genome sequences to surveys of populations. All of that data is important for reproducibility, for advancing science, for making treatments and technologies. But if we can't unlock that data in a constructive way, i.e. that it's sort of harmonized in some way, has clear metadata, clear standards, is useful for the community, it ain't worth it. So we have to invest in not only making the data fair and accessible, but we have to invest in our infrastructure of data. And that's what you guys are. You're our underlying resource of data. Really important for future discoveries. And I know that you believe me in that because you're working on this. Okay, so the next slide. This is also a shameless advert for the program for which you are also a part of. It's our Data Repository Knowledge Base program. This is a collaboration across our 27 institute centers and offices. Most of the offices support this program by funding. My office co-funds when we can make advantages and strengthen the resource. I'm really, really happy that Nosifat and Ishwar, others, Chris Duncan, are working on this for and leading us in this effort. You'll see that there are two funding announcements at the bottom in sort of small print. I'm very pleased to tell you that I do have support from Dr. Bhattacharya, Matt Memoli, and John Borsch to make sure that we issue these funding announcements. We're just going through the slightly long process of getting things from paper to out the door so that you can respond to them. But we should see those out hopefully this summer. Just bear with us, the process is long. You can read more about the program from the link there, and the slides are for you. You can link on any of these things. Next slide is just a big summary of the overall program. The number of seat dates, the number of competing awards, the amount of resources, in terms of knowledge bases, repositories, early and well-established. You're a well-established repository resource. Next slide is just a sort of a summary by the institute centers and offices. The takeaway message here is that while you will see one single IC funding particular resources, that's in black, there are more and more co-funding opportunities across the institute. So what that means is that the institutes are working together to fund your resource, and you're not funded just by NIDCR, but you're funded by other institutes in my office. So that's a really nice takeaway message, is that you're able to get resource money from across the NIH. And ODSS, I'm the blue line, you can see that I'm only outgoing. We don't hold grants in the Office of the Director in this way. So we just provide funds to the ICs to better enable our resources. The next slide. I would love you to consider indexing your data in the NLM Dataset Catalog. We've indexed a few repositories, all the gray generalist repositories are there. So do you consider doing this? It's not a mandate, it's just an opportunity. It's worth making your data discoverable. We want NLM to be the place where researchers can come to look across our ecosystem, data repositories, to find the data that's of interest to them. So do consider that, and I can help you and point you to the right people to work with. Next slide. So this is relevant in a weird way. I want to tell you a little bit about a partnership that we have with NSF, the Proto-OPN, the Proto-Open Knowledge Network, started by my friend Jake Barber about 3-4 years ago, but we've been working on this for many years. And the idea is to create a network of networks or network of knowledge graphs that will link data repositories and resources together so that you can find things a little bit more easily, develop AI a little bit more, with a little more agility. So the lead organization is NSF, and was at a tip. We are participating along with NASA, Department of Justice, NOAA, and USGS. We and NIH are the foundation for, and it has an unfortunate name, the FABRIC. So we are the interconnecting fabric of AI for biomedical data, meaning that we're trying to create knowledge networks for our data resources so that we can integrate into the larger Proto-OPN. Next slide is just one example from PAN base. This is PAN graph. So this is a knowledge base of type 2 diabetes funded by NIDK. We gave them a little bit of extra money so that they could connect their data, their annotations, knowledge graphs to knowledge literature. You can see some of the things that they're doing in terms of interfaces to support answering the questions, to support developing large language models, and to make recommendations about questions related to PAN graph or type 2 diabetes. So this is just one example of some of the work that we've been doing. Where are we going with this? So the next slide. Last year, almost just a little shy of a year ago, 2025, we held a workshop to ask the community exactly this question, like where should we be headed in terms of knowledge graphs and AI, creating larger capabilities for finding and accessing information. This report, which is in the archive, is the result of that workshop. The chairs, Kathy Wu and colleagues, have written this report. So it's worth looking at if you're interested in this topic and interested in knowledge graphs. Just gonna wait because there's a picture. Okay, and so the next slide is just a little preview. One of the recommendations that's resonating with us is that in general, if you create a knowledge graph, it is a snapshot of that information at that time, and it's a graph of all the triples. What we would be interested in is the dynamics of these knowledge graphs or the temporal graphs and how these are evolving in terms of knowledge. So this is something that I think you could also embrace. So we would like to know how better to include the representation of evolving relationships in knowledge graphs. So that is something that we are looking forward to this coming year and in the future. Next slide. Okay, so this is a little bit of a repeat from the PI meeting if you were there. We know that we have quite a number of databases and knowledge bases that we're supporting at NIH. And so it's a pretty expanding and a little bit of a siloed effort, even though we're trying to bring these things together through groundwork, boots on the ground at NIH. There's inconsistency in terms of the strategic needs of these resources. There's inconsistency in terms of the governance of these resources. It's very hard to create federation. These are sort of not aligning. And we have a whole nother, which you are also a part of, our CADAR system, whole nother level of work to do on our controlled access data repositories. Thank you for meeting the the April 1st deadline. I'm really happy. All of our caterers met that deadline, which was a big relief because if they didn't, we'd shut them down. So I'm really, really pleased that everybody met the deadline. We want to make sure that we can grow these resources. We want to make sure that we can have consistent management practices and then really address the sustainability question, which is the hardest question to address. The next slide. These are recommendations that came from our staff at NIH, creating sustainability plans, making sure that we develop operational best practices for sustainability, adopting standard metrics and ways in which to collect them, establishing processes for sunset so that it's not like a light switch where things just suddenly go off and the community is left wondering what happened to that resource. Creating structured oversight that makes sense to the federal government and to the stakeholders, making sure it's not a problem for you, that you have external stakeholder feedback into the resources, and then creating that oversight. So next slide. So we came up with a definition of what is a strategic biomedical data asset. It's a database or repository that provides strategic utility for NIH. It has high-valued assets that drive innovation, that fulfill the missions of NIH and the institutes, at least one institute for sure. And then it provides cutting-edge research capabilities. So we have outlined a few characteristics: quality of data, stewardship of the resources and the data within, partnerships with the community, including the journals, security and infrastructure, that's really about RAS and all the IST 800, 53 and 171. Quality of service, that's really knowing your users and assessing what they need in ways that make sense to you. And then technical performance. That's really about the infrastructure itself, the scalability of the storage, any compute capacity that may be on there. So with this definition and understanding that we do need to think about strategic biomedical assets, we are now conducting a tabletop exercise to see if this definition fits our resources and to make sure that we aren't missing anything. So we're just started that tabletop exercise last week. So we'll be conducting that throughout the summer and making any needed adjustments the definition to the characteristics. Next slide is making some of these recommendations that NIH proposed to action in terms of outlining how resources will create sustainability plans, what is in those plans, like what are the elements, creating a set of core metrics and ways to collect and ingest those metrics and make them discoverable from the community's point of view, looking at the assets life cycle and developing sunsetting best practices. Those best practices are for the ICs, should they need to decide to sunset a resource, and also for the community and the resources themselves, should that have to happen. And finally, promoting management that is transparent, consistent, and effective governance across NIH. So really thinking about these assets, not just as little gems all in a little box in the IC, but something that sits in the crown that is really connected and really for this, our strategic biomedical data assets. So the next slide. This is not the only activity thinking about this, actually. The National Academies is standing up a new working group. It's called the READY Working Group for Resilient and Enduring Data Structures for Biomedical Life Sciences, Research and Innovation. We, NIH, are funding this group as well as two nonprofits. So we are the federal government supporting this. There are two nonprofits that are also supporting this. This is a 3-year endeavor with the National Academies. I hope that some of you consider joining this effort, either permanently or coming in for some of the meetings. What it will accomplish is articulating ways to promote collective actions towards sustainable and purpose-driven infrastructure. And it's really focused on my interest, which is life science research. Advancing attention to and implementing a life cycle-based approach, we will take their recommendations into the things that we are thinking about for sustainability and sunsetting metrics, supporting fields of experimental with and learning from new approaches in database sustainability, new business models. This is something that they're going to help us understand, which is how do you talk about sustainability in terms of a business model, something that many of us are used to. And finally, we want to strengthen our multi-sector, multi-stakeholder collaborative networks. So I am excited to start this initiative. I think it's going to start this summer. We signed the paperwork. We're getting the folks involved, so it should launch fairly soon. The next slide is, I think, the last slide, which is we're not alone in this effort. This is a worldwide effort. There are a number of activities. You probably are familiar with Trust Seal. Maybe you're familiar with Global Biodata Coalition. This is an international body that does something similar to what we're doing in terms of promoting core resources. They have their own way of reviewing applicants who want to be designated a core resource. It's worth looking at. It might be worth it for you to go through the process. It's like a badge. There's no money attached. We're working to get something a little more cohesive with these core resources. Finally, there's the Be Sustainable implementation of FAIR principles of life sciences through the journal article. So these are some of the other efforts that are going on along with our effort. Next slide is, yes, it has been 15 minutes. Okay, thank you so much.